The biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Little Tuesday morning edition, Air Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Air Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. We're dealing with some technical difficulties here behind the scenes. Hopefully there are no issues. If there are problems with the sound, get with me in the chat. But other than that, we got ourselves a loaded Tuesday episode of the Air Torres Pod. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it. Texas. The roster's coming together. It's awesome. But is this national title or bust for Texas? Because I'll tell you what, it sure does seem like they spent a lot of money. As a matter of fact, it sure does feel like it might be a historic amount of money. I will tell you all the details there. Ty Simpson, this story just won't go away. It appears as though more schools trying to get him in the portal. Will he commit? Will he come back to college football? Oh, by the way, Jordan Seaton, the Colorado star, is going into the portal. What does it mean for Deion Sanders? And then we will go ahead and wrap one little college hoop story. Tyran Stokes, number one player in America, a guy we have certainly talked about a lot over the last couple months. It appears as though he may be on the verge of committing, so we will discuss all of that. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. One, make sure that you are subscribed. Air Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. And darn it, we really do appreciate your support. If you're not subscribed here on YouTube, please make sure to do so. Drop your comments in the chat. Also, make sure you're subscribed on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Speaking of all things Aaron Torres, you know what we got to do before we get started. We also got to thank our friends. We got to thank our hotel and casino partners. We got to thank Circa Sportsbook and Circa Casino. Okay, so Circa, when you're in Vegas, best place to watch games. Beautiful stadium swim outside. Inside, you have the world's largest sports book. But as I've told you a million times, I know not everybody can get to Vegas. It's a long trip, whatever, New Year's resolutions, money, whatever. The point I'm trying to make, you know where you can get? To the new Circa Sportsbook at Mint Kentucky Downs in beautiful Franklin, Kentucky. Okay, so the Mint is now officially a Circa Sportsbook, and what I love about it, first of all, very easy to get to. It's about 40 minutes from Nashville. I did the drive back in December when I was at the Mint, and when I was on the East Coast. It's about a 40-minute drive from Nashville, 20 minutes from Bowling Green, Kentucky. But what I really love about it is that all of the same great amenities that you get at the Vegas Sportsbook, guess what? They have come to the Mint in Franklin, Kentucky. So if you have not been yet, make sure to check it out. It's that time of year. A lot of college hoops, some college football still going on. One game left. Great place to watch the national championship game. Mint Kentucky Downs. Beautiful Franklin, Kentucky. Thank you to the Mint for their support of the Aaron Torres Pod. With that said, it is a busy midweek episode of the Aaron Torres Pod. There is no more time to waste. So people, let's get to it. Let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, transfer portal is just about done. And it's funny because even on Sunday's show, I avoided doing any big picture stuff on Cam Coleman, Dylan Raiola, Sam Levitt, because I knew. I said, guys are going to come off the board quick here. Semesters are about to start. I know we live in a world where we don't even think of college football as an academic enterprise anymore, but it is. I knew guys were going to come off the board quick, and they have. Sam Levitt to LSU, Dylan Raiola to Oregon. But it was certainly an interesting couple days since the last time we spoke at the University of Texas, where a couple things have become very apparent. One, credit Steve Sarkisian. They are clearly a transfer portal winner here in December and January. Two, we are now getting reports that they have spent a preposterous amount of money on their roster. And three, maybe most important, based on what they've already done, based on who they have coming back, and based on maybe just maybe who they may still be getting, It feels like it's an all-in natty or bust type season for the Texas Longhorns in 2026. So let's go ahead and dive in. Since Sunday's show, everybody knows the news by now. I'm not going to spend a ton of time breaking down these commitments because this news, by the time you see it, 36 to 48 hours old, but it was a great Sunday for Texas. First of all, I don't even remember which one happened first, but the one that obviously we've been talking about a lot on this show, Cam Coleman officially a Texas Longhorn. For people who do not know, we'll be quick on this because every Texas fan is like, dude, we've been scouting Cam Coleman for months now. But he was the number one wide receiver in the transfer portal. I believe he's the number one player in the portal available overall. Former five-star top 5 player, had 56 catches and 8 touchdowns at Auburn last year. And for everybody that wants to say, 56 catches. Listen, Auburn had the worst quarterback play in the SEC. Like, I was actually thinking about it this morning. I think it is indisputably the worst quarterback play in the SEC. Vanderbilt was awesome. Kentucky with Cutter Boley was good. Everybody had good quarterback play in that league except for Auburn. The play caller gets fired in the middle of the year. You're not going to blame Cam Coleman. There is a reason that Texas wanted him, that Alabama wanted him, that A&M wants him. And to his credit, Steve Sarkisian lands the big fish. We talked about it the day the portal opened, that I thought Texas or Texas A&M would land Cam Coleman. I was leaning Texas toward the end, and that's exactly what happened. Speaking of Texas, they didn't slow down on Sunday, and because just minutes of the Cam Coleman commitment, we saw another big piece of news that I think, again, if you follow the portal, a lot of people were expecting. Hollywood Smothers, many believe to be the number one running back in the transfer portal, was at NC State, ends up in the portal, basically verbally commits to Alabama, does not show. It was a weird deal. But basically you started hearing rumors, I think even back to Friday, of like, yeah, he's committed to Bama, but how tight is that commitment? Well, I just bring it up because really, what was it? About a couple minutes after Cam Coleman, we find out that Hollywood Smothers has, in fact, flipped his portal commitment, never signed binding paperwork at Alabama, flipped his portal commitment to Texas. And you can argue indisputably that Texas maybe, just maybe, got the top 2 players in the transfer portal, the best running back in Hollywood Smothers, the best wide receiver in Cam Coleman. It is worth noting, by the way, we're going to dive into this a little bit more later. Jordan Seaton, the offensive tackle from Colorado, former 5-star who played 2 years at Colorado, he entered the portal late Monday night. There are now rumors that Texas is among the favorites to land him. So 2 things are obvious. 1, Texas is spending a lot of money on its 2026 roster. And 2, as I said, it sure does feel like it's natty or bust. As far as the dollar amount, listen, nobody really knows. I'm sure there's somebody at Texas that actually knows, whoever's running the collective, whatever. But you start doing the math. Star players, entering a 3rd or 4th year, premium positions, you can realize that, like, oh, they spent a lot of money. So how much money do we think they actually spent? I thought it was interesting. Rusty Mansell, who has been covering Georgia football forever, he put out a very interesting tweet that caught my attention. Matt, you can pop up that tweet. Rusty Mansell, I believe it's Dog Nation Daily. It's one of the good Georgia websites. He put out a report that said this: Texas will have the first $40 million roster in college football. No doubt in my mind, they are close to that in real salary. This is an all-in season for Sark, quite literally. Now, first of all, I think we should preface, first of all, Rusty Mansell, remember, he covers Georgia. So Georgia is recruiting a lot of the same players as Texas. He's having a lot of conversations with agents and players and high school coaches. If he says it's about $40 million, it doesn't surprise me. Now, I do think it's funny. Remember when we all thought that, none of us actually thought it, but remember when we were told that everybody was going to abide by a cap of $20.5 million this offseason for the entire athletic department? Forget about the fact that, you have to pay for the basketball team and maybe a couple guys on the baseball team and maybe, a softball player or women's basketball player or whatever. We're supposed to have $20 million spent for the entire athletic department. Rusty Mansell is reporting that it is twice that at Texas. Now, to be clear, because I know Texas fans are going to say, Torres, you always hate on my school. I don't care. I think players should get paid whatever somebody's willing to pay them. I think the market generally corrects itself. I think if you spend a lot and you win, like at Indiana, like at Miami, even Texas A&M, guess what? The money keeps flowing a year from now. You spend a lot of money and it does not go well. That budget tightens up. It's harder to get donors involved. And so I just bring it up because I don't really care what people are spending. I do think it's funny that people thought we were actually going to abide by a $20.5 million cap. And so I think that part's interesting. But what I will say is two things. One, as far as the $40 million is concerned, listen, the number sounds about right to me. And I thought it was interesting, a couple things. First of all you got to do is look at what we know about the transfer portal, right? What we know is this. A star quarterback is now demanding in the neighborhood of $4 million. Now, maybe if you're Ty Simpson, it's closer to $6 million because people are trying to get you out of the NFL draft. As we record here, by the way, Ty Simpson's still planning to go pro. But maybe it's 6, maybe it's 3.5, maybe if you're Brennan Sorsby, it's 5.5. But the going rate is about $4.5 million for a quarterback. So I think it's safe to say that Arch Manning, just from Texas, that's probably what he is getting from the University of Texas. We don't have the exact details. He's clearly making millions and maybe tens of millions of more through true NIL. But my guess is through Texas, he's probably making $4.5 million. Bring it up because on top of that, never forget, Cam Coleman. He ain't coming cheap. Thought this was interesting. Shannon Terry, who runs On 3, he's not a reporter, but he talks to Chris Lowe every day. He talks to Pete Nakos every day. He put out an interesting tweet that said, quote, I haven't heard the full details yet, but I would think Cam Coleman was paid $3 to $3.5 million from Texas, maybe more. I doubt Alabama was ever in the ballpark. So this, of course, referencing the fact that Alabama was very late, got a late visit. I think that was maybe more out of respect for Derek Nix, the wide receiver coach who came from Auburn. I think Cam Coleman has friends on the team at Alabama. But to Shannon Terry's point, Alabama just does not have the money to spend on one individual skill position player like Texas, Texas A&M, and Texas Tech do. Still, though, I bring all this up to very simply say that while it is interesting to speculate on exactly how much the roster costs, by the way, did not mention Colin Simmons, whatever the premium is for a defensive player, probably in the $3 million a year range. I would guess he's probably there. So basically, just with Arch Manning, Cam Coleman, and Colin Simmons, I think you can easily get to 10, 10.5, 11, $12 million. And so now you're putting together a 100-plus man roster. You can see how quickly the number gets to 40 quick. Again, don't really care. But what I do think it says to me is that as all of the reports are saying, and I truly believe this to be correct, I think it's an all-in type season for the University of Texas. There are no excuses. First of all, I don't blame Sark at all, right? People want to give you the money. You want to raise the money. Go ahead and spend it. Go get the best players you can. I also do think in their defense, they're kind of in a unique situation. There's a lot of turnover in the SEC right now. LSU is going to have a new head coach. Florida is going to have a new head coach. Ole Miss is in the middle of transition. Georgia has been good, but maybe not elite. I know Georgia fans are going to get mad at me for saying this, but you haven't won a playoff game in 3 years. Alabama is whatever Alabama is right now. So I just bring it up because it's this weird moment in time. You do have Arch Manning coming back, and I do not blame you for spending whatever it takes to put a national championship caliber roster together. But at the same time, and this is where I do think it gets important, when you're all in, when it's natty or bust, when you're spending the type of money that they're spending, guess what? You got to go out and actually do it. And that's what becomes so interesting about this transfer portal world that we live in. It's kind of funny, like throughout the season, I constantly got the question of, Torres, we see all these changes. Penn State, LSU, Florida, Auburn, we know the schools that open up. And people said to me, they said, do you think this is a one-year outlier, or do you think in the NIL world, we're going to be quicker to pull the trigger on coaches? And what I said is, listen, I think it's a little bit of an outlier, but what I do think is this. When you're asking fans year over year over year to donate money, to give cash, to get players, to do this, to do that, You got to win, and you got to win in a hurry. And we saw it across college football this year. Penn State, it was very public that they were all in on the 2026 season. Drew Aller's coming back. Nick Singleton's coming back. Katron Allen's coming back. All that. You spend a bunch in the portal around those guys on top of retaining them. You got to win. And you go on a 3-game losing streak. All of a sudden, you got to tell James Franklin to hit the road. LSU, we know how much they spent on their roster. And when Brian Kelly's getting his face beat in by Mike Elko and Texas A&M, guess what? It's time to have tough conversations about Brian Kelly. And so I'm not saying Sark is on the hot seat. I'm not saying anything like that. But what I am saying is when you have Arch and you very clearly are building a national championship caliber roster around him, guess what? You got to go out and win a national championship. It'll be interesting. I think the SEC could be a little bit down next year. And Texas does see a window. Window's open. Now you got to capitalize. No, they played for an SEC title a year ago, or I guess a season ago, not this past season. Obviously, that was Bama, Georgia. But you played for an SEC title in the 2024 season. 2026 feels like it's all in. Sark, you better get the job done because this is a very expensive roster, and we will see what happens at Texas. All right, that's what I want to do. Do you want to take a quick break? Do you want to come back? Do you want to talk a little bit more portal activity and portal news and notes? Ty Simpson, this story just will not go away. Could he end up back in college when it's all said and done? And then, oh, by the way, we got to talk about Jordan Seaton, Deion Sanders, maybe the best recruit that he ever signed. He's out. What does it mean for Prime, and where is he going to end up? Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, let's be real. Nothing ages you faster this time of year than following your favorite college football team. The recruiting, transfer portal, NIL, maybe you had a coaching change, maybe you're even getting ready for a postseason game. Well, unless you're Notre Dame, another conversation for another day. But it leaves wrinkles and does a number on a man's face. That's why, folks, I use Tiege Hanley. Yes, I've been telling you about Tiege Hanley. I started using it about a month ago now, and I'll tell you what, I look better and my skin feels better even during this hectic time of year. Among my favorite products, the Super Serum and Eye Serum, they've been legit game changers. Fine lines, softer. Under eye bags, way less brutal. Yeah, I might be up all hours of the night watching all sorts of games, but with Tiege Hanley, you'd never know it. What I love about Tiege, everything they make is high quality and designed for us guys. They send you exactly what you need each month, so you don't have to wander around a store pretending that you know what all these labels mean. By the way, ladies, this time of year, this makes the perfect gift for the fella in your life who needs help, your dad, your friend, your coworker, whoever looks like he might have a couple wrinkles rolling in from watching too much film in the middle of the night. Right now, this is what I love about Tiege. They're giving listeners of the Aaron Torres pod a special offer, 40% off your first box plus a free $20 gift. That's an insane deal for how high these quality products are. All you got to do is just click that link below. That's 40% off your first box plus a $20 free gift. An insane offer. Just click the link below. Football might drain you emotionally, but Tiege keeps you looking really good. Even as, again, you're breaking down film late at night. You're not a coach, but you know what? Tiege Hanley's going to make you look good anyway. All right, everybody. Back. Good to be back. So we're having some audio difficulties right now. We're going to do a mic check in real time. Give me half a second. Mic check. How do I sound, Matt? How do I sound? All right. I'm going to try not to move. You know who may be on the move, though? Ty Simpson. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into, a story that just won't go away, and that is the transfer portal, maybe recruitment of Ty Simpson. Okay, so Ty Simpson, Alabama quarterback, you know the deal. And it was really about 10 or so days ago, a little bit after the transfer portal opened, that basically we started getting these reports of like Ty Simpson, he's at Alabama, just completed a season in which he led Alabama to an SEC championship game, 11 wins, and oh, by the way, a playoff win at Oklahoma, could he actually enter the transfer portal? And so the story from about a week ago was basically like, look, there are schools that need a quarterback for the 2026 season. The belief is Alabama is ready to turn the keys over to Keelan Russell. The former 5-star was maybe the number 1 quarterback in the class of 2025, so just completed a redshirt season. Austin Mack, by the way, came into the Rose Bowl for an injured Ty Simpson and looked really good. So Alabama was ready to move on. And the big question simply became, would Ty Simpson enter the transfer portal? Well, I bring it up because, what was it, probably Thursday, Friday of last week, it quickly becomes clear that Ty Simpson, he's going pro. He makes an announcement, tells the Alabama staff, I'm putting my name in the draft. I don't know if we ever got the official thank you Bama graphic, but it was clear that he was going to go pro, and we don't do much NFL draft stuff on this show. But I think you basically read any report, he's probably QB3, assuming Dante Moore goes pro, Mendoza, Moore, and then Ty Simpson. Well, why I bring it up is because just because Ty Simpson has said publicly, just because he put out maybe the graphic that said, thank you, Bama, roll Tide forever, does not mean that he is necessarily staying pro. That is because over the weekend on late Sunday, so it was after we did our Sunday show, we got a report that Ty Simpson is still very much being recruited by players or by schools in college football. And there are college football programs that are trying to convince him to go into the transfer portal. Okay, so the original report was from AL.com. It was behind a paywall. You know our stance on paywalls. We respect paywalls, pay for it, whatever. Here's the thing, though. All the news got out on social media by the end of the day, so we're just going to share what everybody else aggregated from that story, AL.com. We're not stealing your content. We're just stealing the content from social media that was shared to everybody. So basically, Ty Simpson has received his NFL feedback, and there are 3 schools that are still trying to convince him, hey, put off the NFL for a year, come back to college. We're going to pay you a lot of money, and you could be in good position. Miami is one. Tennessee is one. Ole Miss is one, although I'll kind of dispute that in a little bit. But I bring it up because there are reports that all 3 schools are very actively recruiting him, and that Miami may be ready to break the bank to the tune of $6.5 million to land Ty Simpson. Ole Miss, Tennessee are more in the $4 million range. Poor Ty Simpson, only $4 million to go to Tennessee or Ole Miss. So let's go ahead and break it down. Matt, I think I sent you a tweet, but at this point, there it is right there. This was from 680 The Fan, which basically confirmed what I said. Simpson, by the way, according to The Fan and the article, is still expected to go pro. And then they obviously ask, our quarterback contracts out of control in college football. I would argue they aren't, because I would argue you're worth what somebody's willing to pay, and somebody is willing to pay for Ty Simpson. Now, as far as the news is concerned, before we even get to the schools, I'm just going to tell you, I'm not the least bit surprised that this is happening. And the reason why is very straightforward. I say this all the time, and I remember talking about this a lot during the basketball portal cycle of last April, May, whatever, is that basically in basketball and football, right, certain coaches are known as recruiters, and great recruiters always find a way to get their guys. And I think more importantly, more importantly, in this portal era, it's like, why wouldn't you go all in on any specific player, any specific whatever? There's more talent available to you. And as I said, great coaches are never just going to throw their hands up and say, I don't have an answer, okay? And what I mean by that is, I'll give you a basketball example, and some of you aren't basketball people, so you don't know. But I remember Florida, late in the process last year, they're coming off this national championship. A couple guys are committed to coming back, guys that are playing well now, Alex Condon, Tommy Hawk. But I bring it up because it was like, we're missing some guards. And people were like, well, what's Todd Golden going to do? And I'm like, Todd Golden just won a natty. Like, you mean to tell me Todd Golden is just going to say, we're not going to have guards on next year's team? And he figured it out. I don't think he convinced Boogie Flan to go in the portal, but once Boogie Flan was in, he convinced Boogie Flan to go to Florida. Xavier and Lee, the same. Now, you can argue how good are those guys actually. Both of them have struggled at points. But it was like with Todd Golden, it's like He's not just going to say, I'm punting on the 2025-26 season. He won a natty. He wants another one. And so it's the same in football. Mario Cristobal is playing for a national championship right now. Like literally this year. You think because he doesn't have a quarterback, because Carson Beck is out of eligibility, and because he hasn't gotten anybody committed, that he's just going to be like, well, it was fun. It was fun competing for this national championship. I guess next year is going to be a rebuilding year, and we'll get ready for 27. That's not how it's going to work. And I think it's kind of the same with Josh Heupel, who's kind of in a weird win or go home kind of season going into 2026. So as far as the three schools are concerned, let me tell you this. One, I absolutely believe the report. I absolutely believe that that to a degree, all three schools are interested in Ty Simpson. And I do agree that they are very much trying to convince him to return to college. Now, as far as the three schools are concerned, one, I would have to think that Miami is if he comes back to college, and as 680 the fans said, it does not necessarily feel like he's in a rush to come back. Now, it is worth noting, he does have to make a decision by Friday. The transfer portal closes on Friday. But it is also worth noting as well, like he can enter the transfer portal and he doesn't have to commit right away. He just has to put his name in the portal by Friday, and he could still do some background work, try to figure out what's best for him, blah, 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 this and that. But as far as the three schools are concerned, listen, I'll tell you this. Miami makes a ton of sense to me. One, they've done this before, right? Miami 3 cycles ago. Remember, it's easy to forget this now. Cam Ward was quite literally in the exact same situation. Cam Ward had declared for the 2024, I guess it would have been, NFL draft. Maybe 2025 NFL draft. I can't remember. 2024 NFL draft. He declared for the draft. He was gone. He wasn't coming back to college. And then all of a sudden, I remember I was sitting there on a Saturday, and it's like, oh, Cam Ward just committed to Miami. It's like, what did they have to pay him to get him out of the NFL draft? But then he comes there. He has a successful year. He ends up as the number 1 overall pick. Carson Beck, it's easy to forget. He was gone. He was not coming back to college football, and then he did. So Miami has a track record of doing this. And I'll say this. They have a track record 2 years in a row of helping an individual player's draft stock. It sounds crazy, but listen, Cam Ward was not going to be the number 1 pick in the draft until he went to Miami. Carson Beck, I think we can all say, it has improved his stock and what people think about him to go to Miami, and it could be the same for Ty Simpson. Even if Ty Simpson is going to be a first-round pick, and I'm not saying that he will be, you could still argue, hey, you come here, you have a great year. You could go from the 29th pick in the draft to the 3rd pick in the draft just like that. And so I'm not surprised Miami is in the mix. The other thing that Miami has going for them, which is really important, let's not forget, going to be easy for them to raise money this offseason, right? Because, I do think it was an interesting moment in time with Mario Cristobal. After you lose to Louisville, after you lose to SMU, I remember thinking, imagine this guy going to his boosters and asking for more money in 2026. They're going to miss the college football playoff. What a disaster, blah, 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 blah. Well, they get in. I think they should have been in. Another conversation for another day. But they get in, and once they get in, they're winning games. And now Miami fans are seeing essentially the fruits of their labor. They're seeing their money is going to good use. Cristobal knows what he's talking about. And so now all of a sudden, if he has to go to somebody and ask for an extra couple $100,000, an extra $1 million if they've already given $1 million, he can do that because he's got the equity of, we're winning. I told you this was how it was going to go down. So it'll be interesting to see. I think Tennessee is in the same boat. They're battling this Joey Aguilar thing. I don't think they really have much of a leg to stand on. I mean, Joey Aguilar just finished his 7th year, and I know there's the weird JUCO eligibility stuff, but just finished his 7th year. For what it's worth noting, wasn't like that good. He was fine. Now, you could argue he'd be better in the second year in Heupel's system, but at the same time, his second year, I don't know if it's coming. They're fighting for it. But he's played 7 years of college football, multiple JUCOs, multiple years at App State, UCLA, and on to 10. At some point, it's just like you can't keep giving guys eligibility. So we'll see what happens there. But they need a quarterback, right? Because Heupel going into next year, man, I don't know. He went 8-5 this year, no wins of note, lost to Alabama. Lost to Vandy. I guess you beat Florida in the Swamp for the first time in a generation, but that was also one of the worst Florida teams in a generation. So they need a quarterback. They need to make a decision. And then with Ole Miss, I'll be honest, I checked in on that one. I don't think it has very much legs. One, I do think Ole Miss very much is still trying to fight to get Trinidad Chambliss eligible. They might get an injunction from a favorable judge in the state of Mississippi here anytime sooner. There was some Ross Dellinger report on late Monday. Maybe they already got it. I don't know. But they also signed Deuce Knight. And so it's like, I don't know. I know they're going to spend a lot if Trinidad Chambliss comes back. I don't know if they have all this money to spend on Trinidad Chambliss potentially, but even if he leaves, to then go after another big name quarterback. Now, I do wonder if they checked in with Ty Simpson to see if he would be interested, and if he would be, could they, I think it's more of a two things. One, just check in, just kicking the tires. And then two, what I also do wonder is if they're just being used as leverage to get a better number from Miami or Tennessee. So I just bring it up to say this is an interesting story to monitor. I'm not going to sit here and lie. I'm not going to say that I have any crazy inside information other than that I don't really think Ole Miss is a factor. But we'll see. Money kind of talks, but sometimes it doesn't. And I think Ty Simpson's in a unique spot. Coach's son, played for 4 years at Bama, kind of, was with the program through the Nick Saban transition. And, there's kind of a quote unquote legacy to protect. I also think Alabama fans would be like, dude, someone wants to pay you $6 million. You should come back to college football. So it will be interesting to see. We'll see what ends up happening. My hunch says that he does not come back, which would make things very interesting for both Miami and Tennessee. But we'll see what happens with Ty Simpson, because this just feels like this is one. They got to figure this thing out, and they got to figure it out quickly as far as what they're going to do next. Speaking of next, so transfer portal is closing on Friday. And you knew there was a slew of big names that kind of entered when the portal opened, 2 weeks ago now. Well, I bring it up because you knew there were going to be some big names that entered the portal right before the deadline. Listen, what did I just say? Matt, you could flip off Ty Simpson, by the way. Don't flip him off, but you know what I'm saying. You could get him off the screen. So let's go ahead and switch gears because, as I said, there is one more story. Let's just get the plain screen up. Hold on one second. Give me 1 second. There we go. Boom. All right. So, as I said, transfer portal getting ready to close in the next few days. And the one thing that you knew was going to happen was that there was going to be a player or two. You just knew somebody was going to come on that, somebody was going to come on and enter the portal that we were not expecting, because as I just said, we live in a world where whether it's Texas, whether it's Oregon, Ohio State, Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, whatever, all these guys are bulldog recruiters. And they're not just going to accept that if they have a hole that they are not, that they're not just going to accept like, oh, we don't have an answer at that position. Oh, well, no big deal. And so I bring it up because we did get a piece of late breaking news on Monday night. Little bit of a disappointment, I think, to say the least, if you're a fan of this school. But Jordan Seaton, who was, I would argue, maybe the biggest recruiting win of Deion Sanders' time at Colorado, certainly the biggest win of the Deion Sanders era at Colorado, maybe his biggest recruiting win, period, even more so than Travis Hunter. Well, it was announced late Monday night, about 72 hours or so before the portal closes, that Jordan Seaton will leave Colorado. Feel bad for Colorado. Feel bad for Coach Prime. Do think there are two things to discuss. One, it is where does he end up? And then two, of course, what's next for Colorado? This feels like a kind of a tipping point moment for Coach Prime. So let's go ahead and talk about it. Jordan Seaton, if you remember this story, it was wild, right? So he was the number one high school offensive lineman in the class of 2024, okay? And so his recruitment was kind of weird. Ohio State, I remember talking about this a lot. Ohio State was in the mix. Tennessee was in the mix. Alabama was in the mix. And he announces that he's going to commit. And nobody really knew where he was going to go. And people were like, oh, maybe it's Ohio State. Maybe it's Alabama. And nobody really had any idea. Well, I bring it up because he goes on Skip Bayless's old TV show before that thing was canceled and announces, I'm going to Colorado. I'm going to be a Buff. All the real dogs go to Colorado. And this was right at the time when Shedeur Sanders was going into his final year. They needed another player, they needed to upgrade the O-line. If you remember, Deion had that famous press conference where he basically said it was after the UCLA game in his first year. They were like, what are you going to do to improve the offensive line? He said, I'm going to go get a whole new offensive line. He does. Jordan Seaton comes to Colorado. To Jordan Seaton's credit, he's been everything that everybody was hoping for, was a bedrock of last year's 2 seasons ago now, but the 2024 9-win team that goes to the Alamo Bowl. Travis Hunter wins the Heisman Trophy. I thought it was one of the best stories in college football, okay? But what was also not a very good story was what happened this past year at Colorado. Shedeur Sanders goes pro. Travis Hunter goes pro. Shiloh Sanders is out of eligibility. Jimmy Horn, who unfortunately had that really sad drop to end the Carolina Panthers season a few days ago. LeJante Wester, all those guys end up going pro. And it kind of fell apart for Colorado this year. Now, I'm not blaming anybody in specific. Deion, Coach Prime, was certainly going through all sorts of health problems. But it goes sideways really quick. You knew there was going to be some attrition. But you really kind of hoped that Jordan Seaton would be the one guy that ends up staying. Clearly, he was very close with Shedeur and Travis Hunter, Shiloh Sanders, etc. Deion Sanders Jr., Bucky, who does all of their social media stuff. But just minutes, a couple hours before the portal closes, he does announce he's going in. Now, as far as what's next, I want to talk about what's next for him, but then also what's next for Colorado. As far as what's next for him, 2 schools seem to be emerging. And before I even get to it, I'll say this. Clearly, he went into the portal because he knows he's going to get a massive payday. And so that's the frustrating part. If you're a Colorado fan, again, we just talked about it with Ty Simpson. I think there's a world where you can understand the scenario of you don't want to see a guy go, but when he is going to be offered so much money, even as a college athlete, it's hard to say no. And we know transparently that Colorado just really can't offer that kind of money. Now, Deion can help you get traditional NIL deals, but it puts you in a tough spot. So I just bring it up because according to multiple reports, the 2 schools that appear to have kind of separated themselves in the conversation for Jordan Seaton, Texas and Oregon. To me, Texas feels like the very obvious one. This came from Recruit CFB on Twitter. Texas and Oregon have emerged for the favorites for Jordan Seaton, according to Pete Nakos of On3. Seaton, the top player in the transfer portal, will command a hefty offer NIL-wise, a heavyweight bag battle, no doubt. By the way, my buddy Jason Shear, who covers Arizona, obviously he's got a lot of ties in the Big 12, says the number that he believes is a starting point of $2 million. So, that could be $3.5 million before it's all said and done. So, one, it's a money thing. We get it. I hate to say it, but there's no guarantees. And so this is life-changing money. It's hard to argue. And if I had to pick, I would say it's going to be Texas because we've talked about Texas quite a bit here. It's an all-or-nothing season for Texas. We just talked about the fact that Cam Coleman is committed, that Hollywood Smothers is committed, that Arch Manning is back for one more season. And so if you're already spending $40 million on the roster or $35 million on the roster and what is supposed to be capped at $20.5 million, guess what? What's an extra $2.5 million for what will be a first-round pick on the offensive line? So I would guess Texas. Obviously, Oregon's going to get in the mix. And could I see an Ohio State, an A&M, somebody else getting in the mix? Sure. Maybe Michigan has a lot of money to spend on the O-line, although they bring back both of their tackles. But I do think it'll be one of those 2 schools. And like I said, when you're a Dan Lanning, when you're a Steve Sarkisian, when you've been recruiting this way your whole life, you're not just going to just punt on the season. You're going to figure out a way to get the best players that you can available, and Jordan Seaton is now available. Lastly, I just want to say this really quick. Colorado fans are going to get mad at me. How much longer do we think Coach Prime is going to do this? And by the way, I hope Coach Prime is at Colorado forever. I like the story. I like what he's done there. I think it's incredible. By the way, we do have a Torres on Colorado page, Torres on CU, for any Colorado fans that are listening. But I bring it up because I just don't know how much longer Coach Prime is actually going to be able to do this. Bottom line is, it just feels like you had that great year 2, 9 wins, all of a sudden, and you can see that information on Torres on CU right there. All of a sudden, it just feels like all the momentum from that 9-win season has just disappeared. Travis Hunter's in the pros. Deion Sanders is in the pros. This season, a 3-9 year. And you look at everything that happened in Colorado. It's not just losing Jordan Seaton. Ryan Staub, who was the backup quarterback, but was really kind of a program guy, stayed at Colorado, could have transferred last year. He ends up transferring. Amarion Miller was one of the first really big commitments that Coach Prime got when he got to Colorado. He entered the transfer portal and is now committed to Arizona State. Draylon Miller, who was the number 2 player in the same class as Jordan Seaton as far as Colorado's recruiting class is concerned. So in other words, Jordan Seaton was the number 1 commit of Colorado. Draylon Miller was number 2. I just bring it up because he's in the portal as well. He committed to Baylor, I believe. I don't know if that's official, but I think he's set to commit to Baylor to play with DJ Lagway. So I just bring it up because all of a sudden you look around and there were clearly very talented pieces on that roster, but a lot of them are now gone heading into the 2026 season. Now, to Colorado's credit, they did go ahead and get some commitments from some pretty big-time players. Boo Carter, most notably from Tennessee. I know Tennessee fans certainly have opinions on him. Julian Lewis right now is projected to be back. So I bring it up because there's still individual pieces of talent. I just don't know if you can keep doing this year over year. It's also worth noting the guy who hired Coach Prime, Rick George, he announced essentially a retirement in November. Now, he's still a quote-unquote consultant with the athletic department, but he's no longer the guy, that Coach Prime in theory reports to. And then lastly, I would say this is, just Coach Prime's health. I hope I'm wrong. I know they spent a bunch of money to bring in Brennan Marion as the OC, the offensive coordinator. So maybe I'm being overly dramatic about this, but I just bring it up because year over year over year, you're losing a lot of players. Everybody does. But Colorado isn't just the type of place that can replace an All-American offensive lineman. I hope I'm wrong, and maybe I am wrong, but I do hope that this isn't, sort of the end for Coach Prime. I'm sure he'll coach into 2026, but just wonder how many more years he has left. If you spend all that time recruiting Jordan Seaton, he plays through a 9-win season, you retain him, and now he's gone. Tough to know what the future holds for Colorado. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and take one more break. Although actually before we do that, why don't we get to one question, one comment in the chat. Jordan Seaton, the snake, dude waited till the last few days to enter the portal after he recruited his cousin to Colorado. Listen, how do I put this delicately? I certainly have my opinions on Jordan Seaton, and I didn't love what he did. Listen, and I even go back with Jordan Seaton to his high school recruitment. If you remember, it's easy to forget this now. He commits to Colorado on that big stage of Skip Bayless's show. But then I bring it up because if you remember, he then on National Signing Day, you couldn't find him, and there was talks. He's from Maryland originally, that Maryland's involved, and could he flip and this and that. And so I only bring it up because it feels like there's a lot of voices in his ear. But I do agree with that commenter of like, if you were going to enter the portal, man, first of all, what Coach Prime has done for you, you would have hoped you're going to be a first-round pick a year from now. You would have loved to see him stay. But if you're going to enter the portal, you don't do it, you don't do it 2 days before the portal's closing when there's no way that Colorado can possibly replace you. Disappointing, no doubt. Disappointing, no doubt. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take one more break. When we come back, one basketball story that we got to get to. Tyran Stokes, number 1 recruit in America. Is he ready to commit? Fascinating story. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, you know what we got to do. We got to thank our friends. We got to thank our partners. We got to go ahead and thank Cauley Puffs and CauleyPuffs.com. Yeah, you see the logo on the back of the screen right here. Okay, so I've told you all about Cauley Puffs, but family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, a huge sports fan. And one day he was sitting on the couch and he said, you know what? I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something my kids are going to love, something my family's going to love, something I'm going to love. And so he came up with Cauli Puffs. This is the new age health food snack. You don't need to go to the grocery aisle and buy all that crap, the Doritos, the Fritos. No, my friends, you need Cauli Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But here's the best part. They taste freaking delicious. Actually, there's another best part. In addition to tasting delicious, in addition to being healthy, they are also taking care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Okay, so check this out. All you got to do is go to CauliPuffs.com. That's CAULIPUFFS.com, CauliPuffs.com, and you can get 15% off any purchase with the promo code Torres. That's Torres, Torres. It's that simple. 15% off any purchase, 1 bag to try them out, 100 bags to cater a party. Doesn't really matter. Promo code Torres. CauliPuffs.com gets you 15% off. Cauli Puffs also available on Amazon. You obviously can't get the promo code there, but CauliPuffs.com, CauliPuffs.com, promo code Torres gets you 15% off any purchase. Thank you to our friends at Cauli Puffs. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Good to be back. Final segment of the show. So good to be back. Couple things. One, first of all, like this video. Just do me a quick favor. Click that little like button. We appreciate your support. Speaking of which, our Inside College Sports newsletter, all things NIL, portal, more. Make sure it's free, by the way. It's an email newsletter, comes to your inbox every single morning. Make sure that you are subscribed to that. It's completely free. And in this crazy world, I think you're going to want to follow. So there is that. You know what else there is? The best ticketing app on the planet, SeatGeek and the SeatGeek app. Okay, so SeatGeek, they are the official ticketing partner of the Aaron Torres pod. Over 28 million downloads. And what I love about SeatGeek is pretty straightforward. One, what I love about SeatGeek is that they rate every ticket on the app 1 through 10, give you a green dot or a red dot. Green dot means go ahead and purchase. Red dot means maybe you want to stay away. But what I really love about SeatGeek is that they take care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. This is all you got to do. If you go to SeatGeek.com or you download the SeatGeek app, if you use promo code Torres, that's promo code Torres, promo code Torres, it will get you $20 off your first purchase. So you want to go to the national championship game? Maybe you're an Indiana fan. Maybe you need $20 off because tickets are thousands of dollars. Go to SeatGeek.com, use promo code Torres. You're a basketball fan. You want to go watch your team. You're an NBA fan. You want to go watch your team. Concerts, shows, more. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres gets you $20 off your first purchase. That's it. Let's go ahead and switch gears. Do want to talk about one basketball topic. And it is a topic that we certainly talked about plenty during the summer that has gone not mysteriously. I was going to say mysteriously quiet, but it's not mysterious. And that is the recruitment of the number 1 high school basketball player in America, Tyran Stokes. Okay, so I think if you're watching this video, I think if you've stuck around this long in our live stream, you know a little bit about Tyran Stokes, but let me go ahead and give you the background because it's certainly fascinating. And there is a reason that the number 1 player in the high school class has not committed and why his recruitment has gone quiet. So we know the story. 6'7" wing, really talented player, successful everywhere he's been. You know, he played at Prolific Prep for a year. He played at Notre Dame Sherman Oaks. He's been on Team USA, blah, 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 this and that. And early in his recruitment, he's from Louisville originally. There was talk of Louisville. Then by the end of the summer, it became Kentucky. And so I bring it up because we all know the deal. You know, eventually cut his list to 5. It was Kentucky, Louisville, USC, Oregon, and Kansas. Then it was down to 3, Kentucky, Oregon, and Kansas. And it felt like for a while there, it was going to be Kentucky, right? I mean, it's easy with the revisionist history now of what's gone on the court for Kentucky. Maybe the issues with JMI, although it doesn't feel like there's very many issues for Will Stein. Another conversation for another day. I just bring it up because there was a time where we thought it was a done deal. There were people saying he might commit at Big Blue Madness, but it was right around that time that he got in trouble at school. He got thrown out of his high school at Notre Dame Sherman Oaks, and not long after, he kind of just went off the radar. Ends up reappearing at Rainier Beach High School in Washington, Seattle, Washington. Great high school, by the way. Great high school basketball history in that place. But the recruiting goes quiet because he got in trouble at the high school. Everyone's trying to figure things out, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Well, I bring it up because since he left Notre Dame High School in Southern California, recruiting went quiet. There was like a weird Vandy offer out there, but we haven't heard much, at least until the last day or two. That is because over the course of probably about the last 72 hours, we saw 24/7 Sports officially put in a crystal ball for the Kansas Jayhawks. Kansas appears to lead. There are also now reports that Tyran Stokes may be visiting Kansas this week or in the very near future. And so I bring it up because Rock Chalk Jayhawk, it sure does look like Kansas is going to ultimately land him. So let's go ahead and dive into this. First of all, Kansas, to their credit, has been there the entire time, okay? And I will say this. I know that there are videos you can find of me on the internet saying that, Kentucky's the leader, Kentucky's going to get him, blah, 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 whatever. But at the same time, there were people in my ear saying they always believed that Kansas was the favorite. And the one thing I'll say is a couple things. One, Bill Self, well, listen, let me say this, and I'm going to be delicate. I'm going to try to be fair, and I'm going to try to be honest. Tyran Stokes has had some off-the-court issues, and Bill Self has never really had a problem recruiting a player that has had off-the-court issues. He is a guy, he's an old-school guy, handles players like that. Well, listen, there are just some coaches that are not built to handle players that can be difficult off the court. And I think Bill Self is one. Josh Jackson back in the day is a famous one. There have been plenty of others. And so it makes sense. It also makes sense because I think, listen, Bill Self is now very. As my mic just went out, didn't it, Matt? Give me a sec. Haven't had mic. Can't hear me. Test, test, test. Can't hear me. Mic's out. All right, mic is good. Let's get through 4 more minutes of this show and get the hell out of here. Today has been a disaster. So, 3, 2, 1, Matt, so you can cut this out. We'll count us down. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. So, yeah, Bill Self is clearly on a year-to-year basis with this roster, with this team. A guy in his mid-60s, not very surprising, but they also do have Taylon Kinney committed. And so if you already have the 5-star point guard committed, go get the guy that he clearly wants to play with, because remember when Taylon Kinney committed, he said, we're going to go get Tyran now. And so we testing. If we can't get this mic going, we'll just wrap the show. It's embarrassing. How does the mic sound? All right. We're having mic issues, and there's no reason to keep going. So we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Appreciate everybody's support. We'll be back Wednesday morning. My guess is there will be plenty of basketball to react to. Thank you for your support.